Ambassadors Cohen, Hillman, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's great to be here.
Thanks for having us on.
A friendly relationship, no question. 9 out of 10 Americans and Canadians feel like there's a strong alliance between the U.S. and Canada. I want to talk about trajectory. About a third of Canadians say that they fear the relationship is deteriorating. Almost 20% of Americans feel the same way. I'm wondering why you think there is that perspective in a relationship that frankly is about as integrated as one could have between two G20, G7 countries. Please.
Well, I'll be honest, I don't know where that perception would come from. I think that maybe there's a sense that we haven't been able to communicate well enough to Canadians, I speak for Canadians, maybe Americans too, that this partnership is going to be now and into the future a source of strength for both of us to get through these troubled times. I think that that's what we need to get out there more. And perhaps people focus on small things instead of the big picture. And the big picture is there's no two countries that are sort of more integrated, as you say, but more there for each other than Canada and the US. And I think the visit recently just underlined that.
We did have a visit. It was Biden's first here, given COVID, right? Not a surprise. What needed to happen? What did Biden need to accomplish when he was here?
So I think what the president needed to accomplish is exactly what he did accomplish. And it's really to reinforce what Kirsten just said, which is how important Canada is to the U.S.-Canada relationship. I think only the president could come here and make crystal clear how important Canada is to the United States in this relationship. As he put it, and he put it this way in 2021, but I was glad to hear him say it 3 or 4 times. The United States simply has no better, stronger, more important friend, partner, or ally than Canada. And he needed to deliver that message because I think that is the central element of the U.S.-Canada relationship, is how close the relationship is, how important it is, and how much of a two-way relationship it is.
Now, one of the Trump administration's biggest successes in foreign policy was USMCA. When we talk about industrial policy, we usually talk about protectionism. We usually talk about support of a domestic industry. Is it fair that between USMCA and now IRA, that industrial policy really equates to the North American integrated economy? Does the Biden administration see it that way? Or is it first and foremost about American jobs, and then we have to pay attention to Canada and Mexico?
So when I hear the word protectionism under the Biden-Harris administration, I bristle a little bit because it's different than it was in the prior administration, which had an expressly protectionist approach to foreign trade and to foreign relations. That's not Joe Biden. And I think he demonstrated that time and again during the visit to Canada. He very much subscribes to the view, if you will, the rising tide lifts all boats view, that when the United States invests, Canada will benefit and Mexico will benefit as well. And he does bring a North American perspective to the table.
So Kirsten, when you and I sit down, we talk a lot about Asia Pacific, we talk a lot about China in the context of 3-5 years ago, where there was a lot of conversation in Canada about how much do we want to be aligned with the US on China, and how much we want to be taking a slightly different path. The Biden-Trudeau meeting certainly seemed as if there was no daylight between the US and Canada on China. Is Canada really like almost 100% with the US on China orientation?
What I would say is this: Canada and and Canadians have had an experience over the last number of years with the unlawful detention of the Michaels in China that has changed public perception of that country, and I think of our relationship with that country. But that being said, it's still a country that is recognized as obviously a very important player in the world. And so we're going to have to find ways to work with them in a variety of areas, including on climate change and including on, we hosted for them the biodiversity convention in the fall and the late last year because of the COVID policies, they couldn't have it there. So we're keen to try to have lines of communication where we can on issues where we need to work together. But I think it's fair to say that when it comes to human rights violations, when it comes to national security issues, Canadians have are feeling like we need to make sure that we are as closely aligned as we can be with our key partners, and the U.S. is primary among them.
Canada and the United States have both experienced a lot more political division at home over the past few years. As the smaller economy, the economy that it gets overwhelmed in some ways with American media and trade and the rest, have you felt that there is an export of division from the United States to Canada? So many people say when the U.S. sneezes, the Canadians catch a cold. Is there some of that going on right now?
I think it's really hard to say. Canadians certainly consume American media. The French Canadian Society consumes French media from France, right? We consume a variety of different medias. And I think that we're seeing across the globe, at least in the medias that our Canadians are consuming, that kind of sense of unease and maybe a little bit of a feeling of unsettledness is a bit everywhere.
France is a good example, but the issues that you're talking about are present and have been present and increasingly present in all of the world's democracies over the last 5+ years. I mean, France, yes. United States, yes. Canada, yes. But look at what's happened. Look at what happened in Germany with demonstrations out on the streets. Look at Israel a few years ago, right up to today. Democracy is under challenge. And President Biden said this right in the election, in the run-up to the midterm elections last year, which is that democracy is the best form of government we know. Doesn't mean that it's pretty. There can be ugliness around that, but it is still, in the end, the best structure of government that we're aware of. And it's something you have to fight for. You can't just relax and say, oh, we don't have to worry about it. Democracy's always been here. It'll be there. It's something you have to fight to maintain. And I think that's what's happening in Canada. I think that's what's happening in the United States. I think it's what's happening all around the world as an attempt to fight back the elements of extremism that are attacking democracy and the fundamental tenets of democracy throughout democratic nations all around the world.
As we're talking, Trump, now the first U.S. president in history to have been indicted, I wonder how it affects your job as you're thinking ahead to 2024. To what extent you feel like U.S. commitments to Canada in the future are just fundamentally more challenging for you to make in an environment where the future direction of the United States might be so very different from where it is presently.
So I don't want to be glib, but it doesn't really affect my job at all, since I don't and can't have anything to do with 2024 politics. Not my job. I spend a lot of time trying to stay away from it. The challenge that Donald Trump presents to democracy in the United States and to relations between the United States and Canada has been omnipresent, having nothing to do with him being indicted. In the unlikely event, in my view, that there is a change in government back to Donald Trump or a Donald Trump equivalent, the more we can embed the strong practices that we're talking about, that we're working on, the more we can embed it in our culture, the more we can embed it in our mutual governments, the more success we can show as a result of those linkages, the harder it will be to unravel.
Kirsten, we're here in Canada. You get the last question, which is if there's one thing that doesn't exist presently in the U.S.-Canadian relationship that you would like to see, it'd be what?
I think I would like to see back to maybe where we started in terms of taking this relationship and projecting it into the future. So in addressing strategic vulnerabilities, whether they are with respect to certain kinds of products or our supply chains or semiconductors or national security and the Arctic and our shared geography, a more immediate understanding that we are only going to get there together and we are only going to be as strong as we need to be by always staying aligned. Ultimately, the strength of this relationship has to be borne by the millions and millions of Canadians and Americans who interact every day in business and academics and our law enforcement, our militaries, our intelligence services. It has to be borne by them because the political winds change. And the way we are going to sustain the huge advantages that we both get as countries from this relationship is by giving all of those relationships the strongest roots we can possibly give them. And I would like the people that have those roots, who are responsible for the relationship, to recognize the value and the power of what they do. Because I'm not sure that's always true. And especially, and I'll speak again for Canadians, I don't think Canadians appreciate the extent to which we are vital to Americans. And I would like to see that.
Completely agree with what Kirsten just said about the way to make this relationship enduring. And I can't help but think about the announcement last week that for the first time in history, a Canadian will be joining U.S. space flight to and beyond the moon in our new Artemis mission. And what an incredible statement that is about the relationship that exists in the science and technology and innovation area between Canada and the United States. And it's not so easy to unravel. It's something that's enduring no matter who the President of the United States is. And so I think that comes right out of the visit. It's consistent with the messaging of the President and the Prime Minister, but it's a fantastic statement and one, as Kirsten says, that should help to rally Canadians around the value of this relationship from a Canadian perspective.
It's something we'll have for the future.
Exactly.
So with that, Kirsten Hillman, David Cohen, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having us.